Right, this is an interesting video, right? Because I haven't actually done a monthly wrap up in a few months. And I was kind of tossing up as to whether that's something people might want or not. But I've decided, yes, I am going to talk about the books I read just because it's for the record, right? And I read some good books. So the way this is going to work, it's what I read in December, January, February, rapid fire, just very quick descriptions, very quick, what I liked, what I disliked. Would you like it? Super quick. So it's not a proper review per se. But yes, I need to do this because I've been really stuck of making videos and I feel like there's a gap now and I need to fill the gap. But anyway, without any further ado, because I need to get onto this, I'm going to go through what I read in order. December, first thing I read via audio was In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This is about a like Pinocchio type character that's got really cool robots, including a vacuum robot called Rambo, who is awesome. So yes, I love this in some ways. I gave it a 3-star. It was solid, it was good, it was a good adventure story, cute vacuum robots. Yes, I will mention that over and over. What I disliked, it was a tad soppy. It was my least favorite TJ Klune so far. I didn't really connect to the main characters, but also I really disliked Pinocchio as a story, so that could have something to do with it. Next, I read Servant of the Empire, the second book in the Empire trilogy in the Rift War cycle by Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wirtz. I gave this a 4-star, which is the same as I gave to the first book. Love the political intrigue, love the interesting characters in this. It is a really cool flip side of the original Magician series, looking at it from the other side. Asian-inspired setting, great. Dislike the romantic elements in this. It really wasn't what I went into the book for, but still, really solid 4-star read. I then read Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This was a 4-star, so once again, my least favorite, Silvia Moreno Garcia. Probably not surprising, because once again, I loved the writing, loved the setting, Mexico City, some of the slums, some of the cool top-tier places. Yes, you really get a sense of what Mexico City is like, but what kind of brought it down for me is it has vampires in it. I'm not a vampire girly, so yes, it was bound to happen. Then I read Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. This one was interesting because as I was reading it, I'm like, I don't like this. But anyway, I ended up giving it 5 stars. Love the portrayal of PTSD. Love the anti-war themes. Loved what the book had to say. Disliked how it made me feel while it was saying that. 5-star though, definitely worth a read and pretty short. Then to break that up, because Slaughterhouse 5 depressed me, I went into The Field Guide to Dumb Stupid Birds of the Whole Stupid World by Matt Crupt. This was a 5-star, nice, fun, non-fiction book looking at different birds and their descriptions, cool little pictures. Love the descriptions of birds because they were very, very funny. I loved the illustrations with the really funny labels. But, you know, it's something you need to read in small doses. Then, to continue the light, fluffy feeling, I read Let It Snow by Beth Moran. This one I did do with audio, and I gave it a 4-star, which is quite surprising because I'm not a romance girly either. But I did really love this. It was a fun, romantic comedy about a meteorologist who's trying to land her dream job, but at the same time having to juggle a large family Christmas with a kind of friend who may become a lover. Who knows? I'm not going to tell you, but you can kind of see where it's going to go. Likeable characters, very non-toxic romance, which is what sold me on this one. What I didn't like it though, I mean, it wasn't a predictable plot, so it wasn't 5-star material for me, but it was such good fun to read. Really fun, highly recommended. Then I went on to The Rise and Reign of the Mammals by Steve Brusatte. Anyone who's watched my channel knows that The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs is probably my favorite science fiction book to date. And this is another one by him which looks at the mammals and how they take over from the dinosaurs. I end up only giving this 4 stars, however. I love his writing style, absolutely love it. The science is really great, really good balance of hardcore science facts with a very narrative writing style. However, mammals just aren't as cool as dinosaurs in my opinion. It's a bit of focus on teeth, but also there are some really great ones. There's some great chapters in there. If you do love mammals, highly recommended. He's one of the great science writers. Then I went into Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, just because, you know, why not? Why not go to from a science non-fiction book to a YA romantic fantasy book? But yes, so this is the first book in the Letters of Enchantment, a duology about 2 journalists who are kind of rivals, and then they take on the journalism for a war of the gods, effectively. I gave this 5 stars. The writing was so beautiful. There's a really intriguing mystery surrounding a typewriter. Really like it. I didn't love the ending though. No, I was really loving it. I'm like, this is going to be one of my favorite books of the year. And then the ending just let me down a little bit. So I have to read the second book and see how it goes from there. Maybe it will redeem itself as one of my top books. I then went into a mystery book and read The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This was audio, and yes, it's like it's an old woman who takes on a carer. She's supposedly someone who killed her family when she was younger, and so everyone's a little bit scared of her. But anyway, this carer decides, finds out more stuff, builds rapport with her, and the story gradually starts coming out. Love the setting, really kind of gothic, creepy kind of isolated setting feeling. Quite like the narrative choice, using the story from the typewriter. So there's like an epistolary element to it, couple points of view. But I really hated the plot. I found it quite silly and implausible, and I had 0 connection with the characters. Definite 2-star. Then I moved on to Hexed by Kevin Hearn. This is in the Iron Druid Chronicles. This is book number 2. And I'm so glad I took it up because I'd read the first book and loved it and then forgot about it effectively. And I love this series and I need to continue reading it. I felt like binging it afterwards. But anyway, gave it 5 stars. Loved the fun read, the integration of world mythology, beautifully done. And he's got this great animal companion, Oberon, who's a wolfhound. Read it just for him. He is so awesome. But yes, it's about a druid in America who has like an occult shop, and then he has to kind of deal with different gods from different mythologies. Very good. Oberon. Read it for Oberon. I went to something that was deep, which is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, the first book in the Bloodsworn trilogy. I gave this 5-star. This is a Norse-inspired epic fantasy following a few different characters. It is heart-wrenching in places. Love the multiple POV. Loved some characters more than others, but they were all intriguing. Love the Norse-inspired world. Just John Gwynne has such a grasp on that. But it was a bit sad in places, so just be prepared. But awesome 5-star read. That was it. I read 11 books in December. I then went into January, just as everyone else, right? And I read 13 books in January because I was on holidays that month, which helped. There were also some audio ones and some short ones. First book I read in January was awesome. It was The Will of the Many by James Islington. First book in the Hierarchy series, and everyone's been talking about this one. I think most people have loved it. 5 stars. It's just a Roman-inspired fantasy with an awesome magic system about people absorbing the will of others, and that's what makes them strong. The politics was great. That's the world building, integrating elements of the Roman world was so masterfully done. There's a really great mystery underlying it all. And the only thing I've disliked about this book is the need to wait for the next book. So, highly recommended. Then I moved on to something quite different, and I went into Rendevu with Rama by Arthur C. Clarke. This is my first Arthur C. Clarke, and this is about a team of soldiers, astronauts, who go off to investigate this mysterious, unidentified flying object that enters the solar system. It is clearly artificially made. It is clearly going to be some form of first contact, but is it? This was fun. I gave it 4 stars in the end. It had really good tension. The mystery of first contact kept me engaged. Loved the pacing of it. I love the interplay as well between the contact team and world leaders who are kind of trying to advise them with some massive time delay. That was kind of cool. And the only thing that kind of brought it down for me is typical of traditional sci-fi is there's not much characterization, and I didn't feel particularly connected to what would happen to those characters. Then I moved on to a 5-star read, which is The Hexologists by Josiah Bancroft, and this is the first in the series, and love this. This is about a married couple who investigate mysteries and then use hexes to kind of solve them, etc. Just such a fun, unpredictable plot. I love the main characters. They're just a really quirky, fun couple. Really nice to see a really stable relationship, the basis of a fantasy book like this. There is a cool dragon. You could call it a companion dragon, and very fun magic system. So this is highly recommended. There's absolutely nothing I didn't like about this book, and I cannot wait to continue the series. Please let it come out soon. Then I went on to the second book of following Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia Fairies. So this is Emily Wilde's Map of the Other Lands by Heather Fawcett. Just like the first book, I gave this a 4-star. I love the characters. It basically follows Emily Wilde, who's this scholar studying fairies, and she was writing this encyclopedia because it hadn't really been properly done. In the second one, she's drawing up a map, effectively, of the fairy land. It is just great. It's got a really fun sidekick character. You could argue not quite a sidekick. He's a bit of a kind of rival romantic interest, and he's just really fun. Great dog companion. Definitely fun to read for that. I really enjoyed the setting, that world building. It's kind of in our world, but at the same time, you've got this great interplay with this fantasy world. You really felt the cold and the nature of these isolated places that it's set in. Really enjoy the writing style too. It is written in an epistolary style where she is sort of writing her memoirs and her notes, like her as she goes. Having said that, it is fairly predictable. The main character does make some poor decisions, which kind of I find frustrating. I get frustrated when intelligent, educated people make stupid decisions, and that's not to say that doesn't happen in real life. It just frustrates me, and I know I should get over it, but it's something, and yeah, it's who I am, right? Yes, I moved on to just a really fun binge. I just binged a whole lot of books in the same series, and that's the Murderbot Diaries. So I read Artificial Condition. I then read Rogue Protocol, Exit Strategy, Network Effect, and Fugitive Telemetry. So these are all by Martha Wells. I couldn't stop reading them. And the only reason I haven't read the latest book is because it still hasn't been released in the same size as the ones I have. and that annoys me, right? So anyway, these were all 5 stars. I absolutely love Murderbot. If you don't know Murderbot, it's basically this security unit, droid type, cyborgy type character who has hacked their governor module, which means that they're no longer under the control of humans. However, they still feel somewhat obliged to rescue humans, despite their very strong desire to just spend their lives watching soap operas. This is just really fun, really great action scenes, great side characters. One of my favorite side characters in this was an AI. Oh my gosh, if you know, you know. Great humor, exploration of humanity, morality, what makes someone human. Very tight world building because these are short books, most of them, and yet you get a real sense of the world. Martha Wells has a real talent in communicating what the world is like in a very, very condensed way. Incredible. She's very good short, like kind of novella writer. And there's nothing I disliked about these. If you haven't read them, read them ASAP. I then moved on to Starling House by Alexi Harrow, which I was reading for a book club, and I gave this 3 stars. It was solid. It's basically about this woman who ends up working at this supposed haunted house in order to pay for her brother's education, so they are orphans. And I love the setting. The haunted house is quite spooky. It does question as to whether it's haunted or not. There's a lot of mystery in there. I do love the house. I loved some of the horror elements in it that had a really good scope for some great things happening in it. And I found that it didn't quite get there, mainly because I really disliked the main character. I found her incredibly annoying, incredibly stupid and naive, considering that she had supported herself and her brother from a very early age. I felt like, yeah, she wasn't very worldly when we consider that. The romantic elements felt weird and creepy. That's probably what brought it down the most for me. And I just got that evil big corporation trope as well, which isn't my favorite. Then I went on and read another book club book, which was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. This is a mystery novel that is kind of breaking some of the basic rules of mystery writing, where the narrator is one of the characters who basically breaks that fourth wall a little bit. A really cool way of writing this novel. And he's forced into this family reunion in an isolated sort of ski lodge. And so he's stuck with his entire family. No one really gets along, and a mystery occurs. I gave this 4 stars. I really like the humor in it. I think it will either work for you or not work for you. Something you got to discover. As I said, the narrative style is really cool, really unique. And I love the closed room mystery of it. It's kind of fun. Just like a bit too sassy at times. And I never really felt a sense of peril, which kind of brought it down for me. But really, like, if you haven't read this and you love mystery novels, get onto it because it's super fun. Then I listened on audio to Schrdingers Cottage, which just happened to be a free book on Audible. This is by David Luddington, and it's about this man who inherits his aunt's old cottage in a small town in England. And this cottage has some weird elements to it. So there's random cats coming in and out, and occasionally walls and doors that kind of open differently. So yes, this is kind of cool. I gave it 3 stars. It was a very fun story. It has cats. That was always fun. I mean, any animals in books work for me. And it's got parallel universes, which I found was quite fun to explore in a sort of humorous way. However, it was a bit silly and it didn't really have much of a plot. But if you want a fun, easy to listen to audiobook, this is definitely one to go for. Then I'll listen to There Are No Stupid Questions in Science by Leah Elson. And the reason I did that is because for Buzzwordathon, I needed a book with the word there in it. And this is the only one I could find that I wasn't going to have to pay for. I gave this 3 stars. It's a non-fiction science book where a scientist responds to questions about various aspects of science. So it's set out in a question-answer format, which I quite liked. It's got a good mix of scientific concepts, very simply explained. So really good for people who aren't science gurus. Probably a bit simplistic for me because I have read quite a lot of science books. The humor was also a little bit forced at times, but really good if you're just wanting to get across some basic scientific principles. And then February. February was not my biggest reading month, but anyway, I did come across 10 books in the end. The first book I read was The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. So this is the finale of the Great Cities duology, which is great because one of my priorities was to finish series. So this is done. The first book really follows 5 people who become the avatars for the various boroughs of New York in order to protect New York from a supernatural threat. So this is sort of sci-fi elements, but just beautifully written. I love the premise of the borough avatars, and the second book kind of continues on from the first one, and it's just continuing to save New York. I love the characters. You really get a sense of their personality and how their personality is very much linked to the borough that they are linked to. Setting's great. You get a real sense of New York. The first book I gave 5 stars to, however, and this one was only a 4-star for me. The reason being that I found the themes a little heavy-handed, more so than in the first one. And there was also an introduction to other cities that I felt was interesting, but kind of diluted what the first book had done. But yes, look, this is a great duology and I highly, highly recommend it to anyone who just likes good writing and just really fun sci-fi concept. Then, the best book of the month, I read Redemption in Indigo by Karen Lord. This was incredible. I gave it 5 stars. It is a fairy tale that I believe is based on a Senegalese fairy tale, and it is just so beautifully written. It's just absolutely gorgeous about this woman who's felt burdened by her husband who expects her to do everything, and so she leaves, and all sorts of fun fantasy elements come in. And I love the fairy tale-esque style, the integrated exploration of morality as well. Very strong morality tale, super charming, highly readable. I could not put this book down. If you like fairy tales, if you like any kind of African-inspired stories, you must read this. Then I moved on to the Halflings Gem by R.A. Salvatore, which was number 6 in the Legend of Drizzt. Once again, trying to continue series. That is my aim. And I gave this 4 stars. I've generally given them most of them 4 stars. And that's because I love the Legend of Drizzt. It's just really fun. They are such fun books to read. But they're not like groundbreaking, right? There's nothing groundbreaking in them. But the Legend of Drizzt basically follows Drizzt Do'Urden, who is a dark elf who grows up in the city under the ground with dark elves who basically just view everything as a very dog-eat-dog world. There's very little morality happening and there's quite a lot of backstabbing, and he decides pretty early age that this society is not really working for him. It doesn't gel with his own personal morality, and so then he has to decide whether to stay or to move out into the world and into a world that really dislikes dark elves, where there's going to be quite a lot of prejudice. I love Doan so much. He's one of my all-time favorite characters. I continue this traditional quest story. Wonderful. Drist is just wonderful, as I said. Great animal companion in the form of like a black panther called Guinevere. Very tense plot in this one. I was really on the edge of my seat for quite some time, and just fun read. Like, this is just such a great sort of palette cleanser series. There's a lot of them, and I'm just going to continue working through them because I love R.A. Salvatore's writing, and I love Drist, and I love these just really traditional, fun little adventure romps. I then moved on to something a bit different, The Witch and the Tsar by Olesia Selnikova Gilmore. This is a retelling of Baba Yaga during the reign of Ivan the Terrible. I gave this 3 stars. The setting is incredible. You know, you've got this medieval Russia. You can really feel the cold and the political difficulties. The integration of history and magic was done very well too. So it's really just telling the history of Ivan, but in kind of merging all this magic and this involvement of Baba Yaga, and I thought that was done superbly. What kind of brought it down for me is initially as I was reading it, it was kind of a 5-star. By the time I finished it, it had dropped down to a 3-star, and largely because of the pacing. The second half felt very rushed. It felt like there was just a lot of exposition and was losing some of that really nice feel that you get at the beginning of the book. And there were some inconsistencies in Baba Yaga's character too, where it's not just a normal progression of character, it's really her just really losing skills that she had early on. And for someone who's very, very independent and self-sufficient, she then becomes quite dependent towards the end. So I didn't love that. But anyway, it was a fun read. If you like Russian history and you love stories about Baba Yaga, I would recommend you take a look at that one. Then, something very different again. I got onto Neuromancer by William Gibson. This is a really like a cyberpunk quintessential novel, really. It follows a man who has been disconnected from the cyber world through some kind of virusy thing in his body, so he can't connect. And then he gets an offer where if he helps pull off this effectively a heist, then he can get reconnected. It is a very hard-boiled sci-fi, it is a heist ultimately, and I really enjoyed the heist. I actually enjoyed some of the sci-fi ideas in this. I love the fact that it was really talking about cyberspace. He was the first to really use cyberspace in this way. I believe it is one of the inspirations for the Matrix as well, because there is talk of the Matrix within this. The ideas were fabulous. What I just liked about this was the fragmented narrative style, jumping from character to character, time to time. And I found it very difficult to picture, like the way he writes in terms of very laconic sentences I just found it really difficult to picture the world. So that kind of brought it down for me, but I'm so glad I read it because it is such an important novel, and I feel like I wanted to read it and I wanted to have that behind me. I then moved on to another N title, and that was Neverware by Neil Gaiman. Very, very different. This one is about the intersection of 2 Londons. So beneath real London, you have kind of this underworld London that is fantasy based. It's kind of the place where everyone who slips through the cracks of society ends up. And so the main character, who has a just normal office job, comes across a young girl, and meeting her changes his life, and he becomes aware of this other London. This I gave 4 stars to. I really like the juxtaposition of Londons. I love that idea of falling through the cracks. So as people in society that we ignore, I really enjoy the way they were characterized and how that idea of ignoring people was really explored in such a humane way. I thought that was really cool and really fun plot in this one. I didn't love it though. And I don't know if it's a Neil Gaiman thing, because I have tried American Gods in the past and I DNF'd it. I mean, years back, so I probably would like it now. I don't know. And I will try another Neil Gaiman. But I really just like the first kind of 25% of the book. Found it very difficult to get into. Felt like I wanted to stop reading it. But yes, and I also found it a bit jarring to have this juxtaposition of dark elements and whimsical elements. Sometimes it was quite disturbing. And I didn't love the characterization either. I didn't feel particularly connected to any of the characters. I then moved on to a novella, Queen Amid Ashes by Christopher Ruocchio. This is a novella in the Sun Eater series. I love the Sun Eater series, which follows Hadrian Marlo, who is a noble who decides to leave home, and then kind of tells his story about how he becomes this Sun Eater, effectively someone who wipes out billions. Loved and hated. Beautifully written, just like all the other Christopher Ruocchio books. Great exploration of inhumanity. I loved exploring Marlo's character in more depth. So this was a really fun one. But I still feel that I prefer the longer form in the Sun Eater series. I like the longer novels. So I gave this a 4-star. I then moved on to Cage of Dreams by Rebecca Schaefer. This is the second book in a duology following City of Nightmares. I listened to this on audio, gave it 3 stars. The narrator's great, really enjoy her. I love the creepy, very flawed world in which people can become their nightmares. So if you fall asleep and have a nightmare, you can become your nightmare. So this city is pretty much just crawling with all these horrific creatures who could destroy you and kill you and eat you and whatnot. And then you have a group of people who are dedicated to wiping out the nightmares. And then you have this young girl who's just terrified her whole life. She's just scared of absolutely everything. She's terrified of becoming a nightmare. She's terrified of confronting a nightmare. And therefore, and she actually needs to kind of find her way in the world. This is a very fun series. The premise of the nightmares is just incredibly unique and fun, very original. And the only thing that kind of brought it down for me, I think, was the main character's not my favorite. And I think I liked the first book more. The second book had quite a lot of exposition. Yeah, I just didn't love it as much, but also very solid. And I don't regret listening to these at all. They were really fun. Number 9 was the Marlo Murder Club, also on audio. This is by Robert Thorogood, and it follows a trio of women who come together to solve a murder. So very cozy mystery. I love listening to cozy mysteries on audio. They are my favorite audio books because I can follow them quite easily and I feel close to the characters. I really like it. I gave this 4 stars. And then, in fact, I moved on to the second book in the series, Death Comes to Marlo, which I gave 5 stars to. I really enjoyed that second book. Basically, the series has really fun characters. You have the older woman who's really set in her ways. You have another woman who's a little bit rough about the edges. And then you have the pastor's wife who is very proper. And they're just such a nice combination. Very interesting mystery as well, particularly the second book. That really engaged me. And also one of the main characters is a crossword writer. So she writes cryptic crosswords, and so the books actually integrate cryptic crossword clues really fun in a very fun way. Possibly the only thing I disliked, particularly in the first book, and I think I just kind of got used to it by the second book, as you do of these books, because you have to have some suspension of disbelief. It's that there's some very implausible policing strategies employed in this. And yeah, I won't say any more, but I found that kind of hard to deal with, particularly in the first book. But yes, that was my rapid fire, what I read in 3 months. I hope you found it interesting, not overly boring. I just kind of wanted to get it out there. These are some of the books I read, and I wanted to talk about them, and I wouldn't have had a chance to talk about them otherwise. So thank you for watching, and until I see you next time, take care.